Okay. So for the first video, I want to talk about how I found out Nova had Down syndrome. Not necessarily how I felt yet, but the process of it. So when you're pregnant, you can take a blood test at 10 weeks. They're called NIPT, so non-invasive pregnancy testing. And the only one that comes to mind, they have different names, like the companies, I guess, that test, but there's a maternity 21. That's the first one that comes to mind. And what it does is it tests for trisomy 21, which is what Nova has, Down syndrome, trisomy 18, which is Edwards syndrome, and then trisomy 13, and I don't remember what that one is. So you're offered these tests, and a lot of times people will do the 10-week test in order to find out earlier what the gender is. But when my doctor offered it to me, she told me, hey, you can take this test to see if anything's going to be, you know, any abnormalities with your baby. Do you want to take it? And it was going to be $100. So at the time I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to pay $100. And I asked her, what do you think? And she had actually advised that I didn't take it because, oh, you're young, like, you know, if you were older maybe, but you're good, you're young, you're healthy, like nothing's gonna be wrong. So I was like, okay, sure. And so I didn't take the 10-week test. Now fast forward to the sonogram that you take whenever you find out the gender. Since I was going to be a single mom and I was, you know, pregnant alone, I didn't want to do a gender reveal because I was just like, you know, kind of embarrassed. Like I didn't want to stand there by myself. So, and you know, not bashing anyone who does, like that is so brave of you, so cool of you, but to me I was just like, no, I don't want to do this. So I went into the sonogram. They tell me you're having a girl, and as they're going through and saying, you know, here's the face, here's the arm, here's the hands, when they like put it to where Nova's feet were, I remember my mom making a comment about how she had a big gap between her toes, between her big toe and then the rest of her toes. There was a big gap. And I just like laughed. We were laughing about it. And you know, then we went in to see the doctor, and it was then that my doctor told me, hey, we saw a marker for Down syndrome. And it really took me off guard because, you know, now when I tell people Nova has Down syndrome, I'm like, oh, this is my baby, she has Down syndrome. Or if we get to talking, girls will tell me, oh my gosh, like I was so worried about that during my pregnancy. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, it just never occurred in my mind. Like, I think I was very shallow, and I don't know what other word I could say that I was when I was pregnant, but I wasn't thinking about, to be completely transparent, I wasn't thinking about Nova's health. Like, I really wasn't. I never thought like, oh, like give me a healthy baby. It was, oh my god, what's she gonna look like? Like, is she gonna have curly hair? Like, are her eyes gonna be light? Are they gonna be dark? Is she gonna be dark skin, fair skin? I was so focused on imagining what she would look like. And even before I knew it was a girl, I pictured myself having a girl. So I just kept picturing, what would she look like? I know I'm having a girl, you know, and that's all I focused on. So it never occurred to me that my child might have a chromosomal abnormality, or I never thought, oh, what if my child's deaf? What if my child's blind? What if my child has cerebral palsy? Nothing like that occurred to me. I just always thought, I'm gonna have a healthy baby, they're gonna be cute, and they're gonna be smart. That was it. So when she said that we saw a marker for Down syndrome, I was like, okay, I've heard this word before, don't really know what it means, but she's telling me don't freak out. And so markers for Down syndrome are not always seen on scans, and there's several different kinds. I remember when I was researching, there's the big one is the nuchal fold. If it's measuring too big, after, you know, the visit, I realized that a sandal gap, which is the gap between the big toe and the rest of the toes, that's a marker for Down syndrome. Another one could be if they see problems with the heart. I can't think of too many. When you're further along, if your baby is measuring the long limbs, like this, whatever this bone is called, and then the femur, Yes, the long bones, whatever the long bones are, if they're measuring shorter, that's an indication for Down syndrome. Also, you could just be having a small baby. So there's a bunch of different markers. And there was another one that Nova had that it was something was up with her kidneys. It was like your kidneys right here, and then you have little ducts or, you know, lines going away from your kidney. Oh, sorry, I had low battery. And that was like that little area was too big. So your kidneys right here, you have the little duct going away from it, and that was like too big. So, I mean, those are the only ones that I can remember right now, but you can always look up, you know, Down syndrome markers, and it'll give you a whole bunch. So the nuchal fold was one, and then, like I said, the kidney was another one. And so she told me, hey, you know, there's this possibility. Do you want to take that test now? And I didn't know what to say. I was just sitting there in shock, and so I decided to take the test to pay the $100. So I went to get the blood work done. I just went upstairs in the building that I was in, got the blood work, and I believe it was 2 weeks later, I want to say. I could be wrong. But I got the blood work back, or she got it back, and she called me and she said, hey, you know, it is looking like your baby might have Down syndrome. You are at high risk. And I was actually working in California at the time. So I'm freaking out. I was at a hotel when I answered the call, and I have a ton of questions. My mind went blank in the moment, but as soon as we hung up, I had a ton of questions. And she told me she would review the paperwork with me when I got back. So fast forward to when I'm in her office, we're going over the paperwork in the little room, and she shows it to me, and it goes by, or at least the test I took, I'm not too sure how they're all measured out, but it said I had a 67, I believe, or 66.7% chance of having a child with Down syndrome. And you know, it was scary. I can't remember what I was feeling. I feel like I just went numb. I just didn't know what to think, but not going into my emotions too much. So she asked me, you know, we could do a more invasive test, which would be an amniocentesis, if you want to know for sure. You know, I was told that there was a risk for miscarriage for doing the amniocentesis, which I'll explain right now. And I decided to do it. But again, whenever I got the blood work back for whether or not Nova would have Down syndrome, again, it wasn't 100%. There was a 66.7% chance that she would have Down syndrome, which for me, I think I remember telling my family, well, you know, that's 67 babies out of 100. Like, there's still that little bit left, or like that's 6 or 7 babies out of 10. Like, there's a chance that she might not have it. And I was trying to play it cool. I really was. But I was every day looking up anything I could find about what Down syndrome was, and, you know, just in case. So, not getting into the emotional part of it yet, just kind of trying to tell you the process for anyone who wants to know, because I know, you know, after I've had Nova again and I tell people she has Down syndrome, a lot of women will ask me, well, how do you find out? And then they follow up with, because I couldn't do it. You know, like basically saying, how do you find out so I know and I can have an abortion? Which is fine. I'm not here to judge anyone. I understand how scary it can be. I mean, raising a child with special needs, whether they have Down syndrome or not, is always you know, it's tough. But it makes me think, like, if you could do a test if your child was going to be blind or deaf or have cerebral palsy or whatever, like, would you still choose to have an abortion? It's tricky. So anyway, so she decides to offer me the amniocentesis, which I take because I'm someone, like I said, who wants to know for sure. And what that is basically you go in, or I guess I'll explain the process since I did have it done. So I went in to the specialist. You have to lay down on your back, and what happens, what they do is they get a long needle, like long, like, I don't know if this is the size of my hand. I would say definitely longer than 6 inches. I've never seen an epidural needle, but I hear that they're big. I did have an epidural. I just didn't look at the needle. Not even because I was scared. I just didn't bother to look. But it's a pretty good sized needle. Like, this is my highlighter brush. It was probably this long, maybe even longer. Okay, so what they do is they stick the needle into your stomach and they push it down and they go into your amniotic sac. And from there, what they do is they start, it's like a syringe almost. So the needle has like a gauge, of course, and what they're doing is they're trying to take amniotic fluid, that way they can test the cells in there. And by doing that, they will be able to 99.9% know whether or not your baby has a chromosomal abnormality, whatever you're testing for. So I remember they were doing that, and it felt like they were able to control a contraction, like they were making it happen, but it was only focused on the back. Like I could feel every time, because like I said, it was like a syringe. So they have the needle in me and they're like pulling on this thing, and I thought like, oh, okay, they'll just take a syringe, I can handle this. I think they ended up taking like 3 to 5 syringes of amniotic fluid. I'm not too sure like if that's the reason for that there's a risk for miscarriage. I honestly didn't look into why there's a risk for miscarriage. I mean, you are sticking a needle into your amniotic sac, which is kind of close to the baby. So they're doing these, getting these syringes full of this fluid, and I just remember like it hurt. Like I was not feeling, like I was just waiting for it to be over. I think I was even holding one of the nurse's hands. I had this shooting pain in my back every single time. Like you feel your stomach almost like tense up around where the needle is. It just felt ugly. I didn't cry though. I think maybe a part of me wanted to. So yeah, they took the fluid, and I remember I drove there myself, and I didn't realize you're not supposed to drive afterwards. I soon found out, because when I was in the car, I started freaking out because I thought, oh my god, what did I just do to my baby? Like I felt bad. I wanted to cry, but I was like, okay, get it together, like just go home so you can relax. And I really could not even drive my car. Like I can't even describe what it felt like. I just could not drive my car. Like my body just felt so weak and stiff. So that's when I did the test, and I believe at this point, I feel like I did the gender scan probably at 16 or 17 weeks, waited 2 weeks. By the time I actually got the amnio done, I had to have been, I was already 4 months for sure. I had to have been maybe like 18 weeks. Yeah, I was definitely farther along for sure. But so then they take it in, they go and they test it, and they actually just call you, and it could be the person from the lab, I believe. It was like a genetic counselor, I want to say, who called, because the lab sends her the results and then me the results as well, because you do have a genetic counselor who talks to you about, you know, oh, this might happen, or what's your background, stuff like that. And maybe she worked for the company, I'm not too sure about all those details, so I don't want to lie or accidentally lie. But I'm trying to think what happened next. So okay, so I got the call. I'm in my room and I get a call, and it is not my specialist, it's that woman. I'm pretty sure it was the genetic counselor. I don't want to say it was someone from the lab. I really believe it was the genetic counselor. And she calls me and she confirms that Nova does have Down syndrome, that they tested the cells and she did have it. And that's the process. Like I said, I'm gonna make another video on how I felt, because I do have a Twitter post, but I feel like a lot of times it does get misinterpreted, what I was trying to say about how I felt. So I definitely want to make a video on that. But for anyone who is pregnant, and like I said, I'm not here to judge anyone, I do know that people will automatically, how do you say, they will think about, they'll automatically consider abortion if their baby does have Down syndrome. So I just want people to know, because I remember when they confirmed it, my specialist had even told me, you are too far along in Texas, but you could always go to Colorado if you want to have an abortion. And like I said, at that point I had to have been 20 weeks or more. So I just think, you know, if that's really someone's decision, I would want them to know, hey, yeah, I get tested at 10 weeks. Because I'm not here, even though I do have a child with Down syndrome, and I would hope that someone sees the beautiful life that you can live with a child with special needs, with Down syndrome. I'm not here to push that on anyone. So that's the process, 10-week testing. And then if something does come back abnormal, again, you could do the amniocentesis, or, you know, like it does have a risk for miscarriage, so some people don't want to risk that at all. I didn't believe that it was actually going to happen. I thought it was very very slim, the chances, so I was pretty confident that I was going to be okay, which I was, and Nova was okay as well. So yeah, that's the process, and I will be making a video about how I felt emotionally. I just wanted to kind of keep this short, and it's probably not that short. It's like, what, 7 minutes? 17? Fuck, I can't tell. Oh my god, have I been talking that long? Oh my god, okay. All right.